So in this video I'd like to analyze how to best play conflict in Everon, and I'll try to do all of that without leaving the map screen. So the first thing I ask myself is, how can I win the map? To win I have to get 5 out of 7 flags. You can see the northern team starts here, and the southern team starts here. And for the southern team, those two maps, or anything on this part of the island, is sort of home advantage, because it's an easy reach of their own spawn. And for the northern team, that peninsula is the home advantage. And Montignac, because it's in proximity to the spawn, even though it's more in the center of the island. So let's make a count. Let's say from northern team, you got 1 flag, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if you own all 4 over here, then you have 2 choices. You push into the home advantage area of the southern team and get Levy, or you take a helicopter and fly down to this island. Now, inversely, that means if you're from the south and you want to prevent the enemy team from winning, then you take those 2 flags, which is easy to defend because you're pretty close to. And if you then take the helicopter, you got 3 flags. And all you have to do is hold 1 more out of that triangle, and then you can prevent the enemy from winning the map. Now, the next point I'd like to show is how to check which flags are easy or hard to defend or to attack. And for that, we have to analyze how the new supply system works. The way it works currently is you get a small amount of supplies in your main base, and most of the supplies are now generated from harbor bases or from airfields. And the supplies from those places have to be driven to other areas. So any FOB you build yourself, or any purple area FOB, they never generate their own supplies. They have to be driven from a supply area. Okay, so the important thing is how easy it is to access a supply area, so how close it is, and how easy it is to drive there. So it's 2 factors basically, proximity and how difficult the road is. Whether a supply base is valuable or not. Now let's take a look at, now under these 2 points, let's consider some bases. Now I consider this area and this area a useless wasteland. Now why would I say that? If you go here to harbor, that used to be the military, what's called coastal base or something. Now what's problematic about this base, and if you play Reforger a lot on Everon, you may have noticed, driving down to the base is easy, but getting out of it is annoying as hell, because you have the dirt road over here that's a pretty nasty choke point for an attacker, can easily lay ambushes. And it's hard to get, once you get here, it's hard to get up. You have to drive uphill. You see it goes uphill. And you have to drive uphill, and you have a slow winding curve, which means you're vulnerable to attacks, and it's just really boring for drivers to have to drive slowly up a road like that. So you can see here, if the terrain is elevated towards the destination, it's less attractive to supply drivers. Which means those 2 bases are not of much value, because it takes too much effort to get stuff from here to the forward bases. And another one, I think it's possibly the worst base in the entire game to get to. Well, except for this over here. Because if you drive up that road, unless you really know the area, most drivers mess up the directions and drive some wrong direction, and they get lost somewhere on it. And you have to drive uphill. Okay, so that's why these areas are pretty useless supply bases. Now you still get supplies from it, but it'll take you longer. You have the risk of your drivers not finding the road, and you're vulnerable to attacks. Doesn't mean you shouldn't cap them, but if you have the option to cap some better base and get supplies from there, you should pick those. Now the next point is, if you build an FOB, because in 1.5 you can build an FOB where you want. And now the question is, how good is an FOB? It depends on position, like tactically or strategically what you can do, and how easy it is to get supplies to that place. Let's take an example. Let's say I would build an FOB somewhere here. Now it's within easy reach of Calvary Hill and Province. However, getting there, again, you have a confusing road network, a lot of little roads, patches of forest, so it's pretty difficult. It's easy to ambush. And again, drivers like to get lost in those confusing roads. Now, if we, for example, put an FOB somewhere, anywhere, if we zoom out, notice here only the most important roads on the island are still highlighted. If you zoom in, you see the smaller roads, but if you zoom out, you see you have the central axis, this road, and this road from Lamentin to Morton to Levy. Okay, so anything you build close to that road is always a good FOB, because no matter how far the supply area is, once you're on the main highway, which I guess that's the highway for the island, if you're on the highway, your driver doesn't get confused on where to drive, and you can drive relatively fast. So that's the thing to remember. If you build an FOB, stay close to good roads. Now the next point is, when you build an FOB, what can you do with it? Like, the idea of an FOB is it gives you a spawn point, so you can quickly do something when you spawn in. How quickly can you do something that affects the strategy of the game? And how good it is, like what's the field of fire from that FOB? Well, that's, for example, a really good place for an FOB, I think, is near that shack over here. Because here, you see the terrain going up, and then it's like a plateau in this area, near Simon's Wood. If you put an FOB over here, you basically have open view all the way almost a kilometer into Levy. That's completely open view. You can shoot at anything that well if you have the weapons for it. And possibly, I think, the best spot for an FOB in the entirety of conflict on this island, on Everon, is, you see that round hill right next to the tree line right here. I think that's the most important. If you hold that hill with an FOB and you have players with heavy weapons, whether it's an APC or machine gun or something, and they're competent with the weapon systems, that's the best spot you can put an FOB, because you have you can directly shoot into province. Like, it's less than 400 meters, see here. You can shoot across the valley almost into Montignac. Like, they can shoot back at you too, and you can basically control this entire road. Now, if you take a ruler, it's about radius of 400 meters. Like, 300 meters is where an average player with an average rifle without scopes can do damage on a standing target. But if it's a target driving past, or he doesn't have really heavy weapons, it doesn't mean much. So if you're outside of 400 meters of a base, you're safe from the fire from the base in most cases, unless they have an APC and the gunner is watching the area. You can see 1 square is 100 meters. So here you have a nice radius approximately of 400 meters where you can cover that entire road. You have like about the 700 meter road stretch that you can take under direct fire. And if you have a good shot and heavy calibers, you can shoot up to here. That's why I think this hill is a pretty amazing place to have an FOB on it.
Where's that machine gun that I need to shoot? I probably should, yeah, I gotta check that with the binoculars first. Okay, yeah. Reloading.
You just have your radio, sorry, the PKM up?
Oh, they're just shooting like crazy. Yeah, here, let me light that whole area up again.